Good morning. It's truly a pleasure. Pragmatic functions associated with classic art, and playfully imagined how these functions apply to the life and art that he has observed. And then, through something akin to incantation, he has spoken the relevant facets forward into a new aesthetics. For most of us who have really listened to him, his formulations about the American cultural landscape seem surprisingly ahead of their time. Like revelations about truths that one senses but does not know, or at least not well enough to articulate. Murray is rarely at loss for words because he never shrinks from calling things out the way they are. Equally impressive as his drive is Murray's breathtaking cultural chutzpah, as Henry Louis Gates has called it. His breathtaking chutzpah was evident from his first book, The Omni-Americans, New Perspectives on Black Experience in American Culture, when he spoke into being a perspective on American race that was not widely held or easily accepted at the time on either side of the mythical color line. Deeply influenced by Constance Rourke's study of American humor, Murray absorbed her contention that the American character is made up of equal parts Yankee, backwoodsman, American Indian, and Negro, and that any person who hoped to identify with an American character necessarily would be embracing all of these facets. Immigrants, for instance, according to Murray, by the very act of arrival, emerge from the bottomless depths and enter the same stream of American tradition as those who landed at Plymouth. In the very act of making their way through customs, they begin the process of becoming, as Rourke would put it, part Yankee, part backwoodsman and Indian, and part Negro. Incidentally, in his insistence that all Americans must identify with, among other things, their blackness, Murray's ideas are not unlike Ralph Ellison's remark in The Art of Fiction, in which he says that African American experience is one that all Americans must identify with and recognize as an important segment of the larger experience, not lying at the bottom of it, but intertwined, diffused in its very texture. Ellison and Murray, of course, are the co-conspirators of the idea, but Murray doesn't mince words. Identity, Murray boldly announced in the Omni-Americans, is best defined in terms of culture, and the culture of the nation over which the white Anglo-Saxon power elite exercises such exclusive political, economic, and social control is not all white by any measurement ever devised. American culture, even in its most rigidly segregated precincts, is patently and irrevocably composite. It is, regardless of all the hysterical protestations of those who would have it otherwise, incontestably mulatto. So, in Cosmos Murray, American culture is mulatto, by which he means non-white and pluralistic, and the American aesthetic imagination is its product. Murray is even more direct with the mulatto imagination is applied in his own art. Consider Premier Cru USA from his only collection of poems, Conjugations and Reiterations, for example, in which the speaker says, "The anecdotes that most immigrants find most representative are those Horatio algorithm that relate and reiterate how the white human trash of Europe, interacting with the human trash of West Africa and elsewhere, in accomplishing what the redskin elite of the forest primeval had no Aztec, Inca, Mayan, or Toltec plans for, became the demographic cream of the crop." For Murray, there is only one kind of American, and that is the Omni-American, the sum of the human trash deposited on her shores, a composite blended beyond recognition of its parts through interaction and antagonistic cooperation. And it is this composite Omni-American that is the demographic cream of the crop, the progeny of all that Mayflower, Middle Passage, and steerage flotsam and jetsam. The mulatto aesthetic created by the Omni-Americans plays out in the art of William Faulkner, who for Murray is the Hamlet-hounded master of mulatto metaphors among Macbeths and county courthouse castles out-demographed by ever-increasing miscegenated thickets. It plays out in the art of Hemingway, who referred to himself as an honorary Negro. Of the fiction of Hemingway, Murray says, "By the very nature of its emotional authenticity, its stylized precision, its flesh and blood concreteness, and the somehow relaxed intensity of its immediacy, it qualifies not only as the blues, but as classic Kansas City blues." As Murray illustrates in The Blue Devils of Nada, the mulatto aesthetic applies to the art of Romare Bearden, Count Basie, Louis Armstrong, and Duke Ellington. As Joe Wood puts it, mulatto culture has given as much to black people as blacks have given to it. The mulatto American aesthetic that this culture generates plays out most authentically in the blues, which has a personal resonance for me as well. What I've always loved about his insistence that all Americans are incontestably mulatto is that, especially with my own blues orientation, Murray allows me to embrace the black part of my aesthetic imagination. To be sure, African Americans created blues, which is fine art, which is stylized experience. But not until Albert Murray said so did most people acknowledge that the blues is a celebration of human existence in all its complexity, and that there is no other attitude toward experience more appropriate to the ever-shifting circumstances of all Americans, or more consistent with the predicament of man in the contemporary world at large. Indeed, the blues idiom represents a major American innovation of universal significance and potential because it fulfills, among other things, precisely that fundamental function that Constance Rourke ascribes to the comedy, the irreverent wisdom, the sudden and adroit adaptation she found in the folk genre of the Yankee backwoodsman Negro of the era of Andrew Jackson. It provides, quoting Rourke, emblems for a pioneer people who require resilience as a prime trait. It seems obvious that all surviving people require resilience, and as Murray says in The Hero in the Blues, art is people's expression against inevitable entropy and chaos. It is the expression of all human hope. Echoing Andre Malraux, Murray elaborates by saying that all art is revolt against man's fate, against the limitations of human life itself. Rourke would have it that the terror of the wilderness that early Americans faced required special resilience. Murray extends this idea by drawing together America's special quality of resilience with its uniquely mulatto blues aesthetic by saying, "The blues idiom lyric is entirely consistent with the folklore and wisdom underlying the rugged endurance of the black American. Blues idiom dance music challenges and affirms his personal equilibrium, sustains his humanity, and enables him to maintain his higher aspirations in spite of the fact that human existence is so often mostly a low-down dirty shame." Murray's only published blues lyric, Aubad's Epic Exits and other 12-bar riffs, which I will simply call Epic Exits, from conjugations and reiterations, is probably his best artistic representation of how this principle works. And the poem also draws together the other pragmatic elements that Murray consistently attributes to universal fine art. While critics complain that in his fiction Murray often simply makes his protagonist, Scooter, reiterate recapitulations of Cosmos Murray, the speaker of Epic Exits is an artistic rendering of a resilient individual in heroic confrontation with the chaos inherent in the human condition, very much as Albert Murray himself is. Although Murray is not a musician, through the blues as metaphor, he has tapped into a significant and obvious fact. The blues feel is pervasive in America, and its swing is also idiomatically American. The narrator of Epic Exits swings in that uniquely American way that only the blues feel provides. When you read the poem, you sing the poem. If you are an American, you know the tune. Early in the morning, hear the rooster crow. Early in the morning, I hear the rooster crow. Hear the freight train coming, whistle moaning low. The speaker is concerned with what he hears, and the sounds of the crowing rooster and the oncoming freight train inform his awakening sensibility as he comes into consciousness and prepares to embark on life's journey. I would add that the crowing rooster might further suggest the mulatto orientation of emerging American blues and the emulation of black style that many American blues musicians, especially non-black musicians, so admire and strive to achieve in their own renditions. Put another way, every person on the bandstand wants to crow, even if, or especially if, the implication of the word crow suggests blackness. Again, you see Murray calling out what most people know. When it comes to the blues, blackness is the most positive and the most essential element in the aesthetic imagination that creates America's music. Even more importantly, though, Murray extends this well-known American tune to an American story, or as he would say, a representative anecdote. Blues as fiction is an example of the primary function of art. From the moment we stood upright, humans began creating narratives to capture experience, to entertain, delight, testify, and teach. Although every human to some extent is a storyteller, some stories become art in great literature, the epic, and in blues. The representative anecdote teaches us the best way to struggle against inevitable entropy. And Murray's omni-American representative anecdote provides examples of a specifically American confrontation with chaos. In Cosmos Murray, however, American stories are not unique. They are not meant to be. Otherwise, they would not be representative, just as Richard Wright's Bigger Thomas is not emblematic of anybody we know. Murray says Bigger is not even a reliable reflection of the norms of abnormal U.S. Negro behavior. Murray seeks to create the opposite of Bigger Thomas, the storybook epic hero of the blues who is the object of admiration or emulation. Even when he fails, there is something in his deportment that inspires others to keep trying. Even his difficulties are considered desirable. The speaker of epic exhibits this desirable deportment by dealing with the experience of oppression, for example, in terms of the dynamics of antagonistic cooperation. When the speaker becomes conscious of the world around him through the moaning of a faraway train, he thinks of old Grandpa, who snagged the underground freedom train, booked his passage through the grapevine, stashed his pack, and prayed for rain. I mean heavy rain. Murray, the speaker of the poem, and old Grandpa all view racism as an American-born dragon which should be destroyed, but also regard it as something which, no matter how sinister, can and will be destroyed, because its very existence generates both the necessity and the possibility of heroic deliverance. Just as slavery is the dragon that inspires old Grandpa to snag the northbound freedom train, the image of the train supplies continuity in the ongoing heroic confrontation with harsh realities. In Stomping the Blues and the Blue Devils of Nada, Murray elaborates on the train's significance to upward and northbound movement of black people during the Great Migration. The train was an awesome beacon impossible to ignore as it snaked through every southern burg, tantalizing would-be heroes into forward movement and hope. Not only did its metaphorical weight harken back to the Underground Railroad, but its driving, moaning sound, which is onomatopoetically recreated in folk blues, informed the aesthetic imagination fueling American music from the turn of the century through the heydays of Duke Ellington, and I would add, on through the birth and persistence of rock and roll. In American music, one can hear the onomatopoeia of the train reverting back to the puffing steam engines and forward through the sounds of the A train barreling through New York City. Murray writes, "Once was the North Star, then it was the L&N, not talking about Cincinnati, not telling nobody where or when, and I'm going down to the railroad track. Grab me an armful of freight train, ain't never coming back." The speaker of epic exits rides the wave of possibility provided by the blues-drenched American soundtrack. The narrator's story is a Horatio Algerism, much like that told by Booker T. Washington in Up From Slavery. It is also Albert Murray's story. It is a bildungsroman following the development of a young man who is well aware of America's dark past, so he enters into a heroic and aesthetic confrontation with it. For example, the speaker hears the sawmill whistles calling him and other members of his community to their menial jobs, but he rejects them and listens instead to the school bell ringing. Early in the morning, hear the sawmill whistle blow. Then when the school bell rings, it's my time to be ready to go. And when folks called me schoolboy, I never would deny my name. I said, you gotta be a schoolboy if preparation is your aim. Then, as Murray told me, he refers specifically to Tuskegee in the poem, saying, early in the morning, listening to the radio, first week on a campus, 4 chime time years to go. And then specifically to his wife Moselle, another Tuskegee graduate. I said what I said, and her smile said, we shall see. Ain't no line of jive gonna make a fool of me. Murray has said you write about what you know about. Try to get to how you really feel about it. If your sensibility is comprehensive enough and your craft is good enough, then what you come out with is probably a representative anecdote. The problem of the artist is to take idiomatic particulars and process them in a way that gives them universal impact. To process the idiomatic particulars of the raw experiences of life into universal statements of relevance and appeal is to accomplish the vernacular imperative, as Ellington did in music, Hemingway did in fiction, and Murray does in poetry. Like Hemingway and Ellington, he accomplishes the vernacular imperative both by writing what he knows about and by referring to the masters and extending the aesthetic traditions that he inherits. Murray says that creative effort means entering a colloquy with the form. In this sense, he is a modernist because he knows, refers to, and responds to the masters of the tradition. But in Murray's case, they are the masters of both the literary and the blues tradition. As he says in The Hero and the Blues, to refer to the blues idiom is to refer to an established mode, an existing context or frame of reference. But then, not only is tradition that which continues, it is also the medium by which and through which continuation occurs. It is the means by which the true and the tested in the traditional regenerates itself in the vernacular. Cosmos Murray is succinctly, aesthetically captured in the blues form of epic exits, largely because the poem is a regeneration of the vernacular into the tradition Murray knows best. As he told Tony Sherman, "We all learn from Mann, Joyce, Hemingway, Eliot, and the rest, but I'm also trying to learn to write in terms of the tradition I grew up in, the Negro tradition of blues, stomps, ragtimes, jumps, and swing." His blues jam, Epic Exits, functions successfully as an artistic rendering of stylized experience because he houses his grand scheme within the tradition that both Murray and America grew up with, the blues tradition. Murray, however, is clear on the point that the blues idiom is not some primitive inheritance he was born with. It is a matter of mastery and stylization. Though few students of American culture seem aware of it, says Murray, what makes a blues idiom musician is not the ability to express raw emotion with primitive directness, as is so often implied, but rather mastery of elements of aesthetics peculiar to U.S. Negro musicians, whose primitiveness is to be found not so much in the directness of their expression as in their pronounced emphasis on stylization. In art, both agony and ecstasy are matters of stylization. Ultimately, Albert Murray's best art, rendered in the blues tradition, lays bare both the agony and the ecstasy of his own personal concept of life, in all its striving and chafing against the chaos and entropy of the human condition. He takes seriously the responsibility that comes with mastering form by demonstrating that, in blues, American artists have rendered the fundamental facts of life that inform all fine art. As he says, no social or political responsibility is greater than that which comes with the realization that there is more earthly chaos and human confusion than there is form, and that he who creates forms and images creates the very basis of human values, defines accurately or not what is good and what is not, and in doing so exercises immeasurable influence on the direction of human aspiration and effort. Nothing is more important to establishing order than one's own concept of life, and Murray's is both sobering and invigorating. Cosmos Murray embraces the agony and ecstasy, the tragedy and comedy, and even melodrama and farce through the blues statement, which accepts, quoting Murray, the fact that the whole shebang could come apart at any time, your universe, everything you know. Ultimately, it doesn't matter whether you succeed or fail. You're gonna die. This is the farce of life. But it's not evil. It's as impersonal as nature. If you view the infinite antagonism of entropy and chaos as cooperative, then the struggle for the human condition becomes opportunity. It becomes the quest for the castle, as seen in the great epics in literature. The speaker of Epic Exits, for instance, finds no enchanted castles. There were no magic keys, nor was there any place on this planet that was a realm of total ease. Murray, as the autobiographical speaker of the poem, calls out the truth as it is. His blues advice has always been, it's not about winning or losing, it's about how many bars can you swing. The speaker of Epic Exits learns, too, that the world ain't promised me nothing. It don't owe nobody nothing at all. Makes no difference to the universe whether you walk, fly, swim, or crawl. In Cosmos Murray, one must confront this reality and keep on crawling or walking or swinging, if at all possible, much as Albert Murray himself has always done. Whether his artistic achievement fulfills the lofty goals of Cosmos Murray or not will, of course, finally be left to the discretion of the ages. But for those of us here today, confronting the human confusion and chaos of our time, Murray's efforts serve as a heroic example of immeasurable influence on the direction of our aspirations. I think we have time if anybody would like to make any comments or ask any questions of me or Jay or Dr. Gramberg or Mark, or any questions at all about what we're going to do today or anything? Okay, well then we'll move along. We'll take a little break. There's coffee and so forth over there. Thank you.